Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, Darius Garland, any of the above? All of the above? I'll tell you why the Cleveland Cavaliers are the perfect trade partner for New Orleans. It's Trade Target Thursday here on Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Thursday, and it is Trade Target Thursday. We are going to look at the Cleveland Cavaliers because they are the perfect trade partner for the New Orleans Pelicans, because you can come up with like 5, 6, 7, 8 different trades. We'll look at Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen. How about both of them together? Or do you settle for Darius Garland? Can you get Isaac Okoro, someone else in there too? There's a variety of ways to make trades work. We're going to look at them here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know, especially this offseason where we are looking at trades for this team to kind of remake itself. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, because we're going to be doing everything. A lot of draft stuff going to be coming next week as well. So let's get into it. Let's get into Donovan Mitchell. This is probably the prize trade target, the jewel that you could get in a Brandon Ingram trade. Donovan Mitchell is a freaking star, and he doesn't necessarily want to be in Cleveland. He was traded there after being in Utah. He supposedly has his sights set on New York. There's been just a lot of like smoke about that sort of thing. But this is a certified all-star level, all-NBA guy that can go out and just score the ball. And that's what you're looking for to really upgrade this team. And while the Cavaliers probably don't want to trade him, he's got 1 year left on his deal. And if he doesn't sign an extension, that really does signal that he's not going to stay in Cleveland. So they're likely looking to move him to get something in return for what they traded for him, which was a whole bunch of picks and things like that. So if he doesn't sign an extension, he's almost assuredly going to be on the move this season. And he is good. There's no getting around it. You know, in his 7th year out of Louisville here, this is a guy who averaged 26.6 points per game last season, made the All-Star game. He has 5 All-Star game appearances under his belt. For his career, he takes over 8 threes per game, but when you look at the past 3 years, that's above 9 3-point attempts per game. Last year, 37%. Year before that, 39%. He's a good shooter. He gets to the free throw line. He makes his shots. He also averages for his career 4.6 assists, including 6.1 last season, 5.1 rebounds. Basically, what you need to know is 26.6 points per game on under 20 shot attempts, 19.8. 2 years ago, when he finished 6th in the MVP voting, 28.3 points per game on 20.6 shot attempts. That's real good, folks. He also, more importantly, shoots threes. His shot profile will absolutely line up with Zion Williamson. He takes 20% of his shots, 21% of his shots at the rim, and 45% of them from three. So you're looking at close to 70% or so of his shot attempts are either at the rim or from three. That's the type of profile that's going to fit around Zion Williamson. He doesn't really take contested long mid-range jumpers. If you're comparing his shot profile to Brandon Ingram, this fits better. And he's potentially going to be available, making $35 million next season. You're going to need to give him a big extension, a near max, very similar to what Brandon Ingram is going to make, but I don't think you really have much trouble convincing yourself that you need to pay Donovan Mitchell if that's what it would come to. Defensively, he's not elite. I will give you that. But if you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers defense the past 2 years, they were 7th best this year, so top 10. They were the first last season. They were first the year before that. Keep that in mind when it comes to talking about Jarrett Allen. But Look, I don't need to sell you on Donovan Mitchell. Spida Mitchell is his nickname, do I? Right? Like, he's good. He would fit here. He would be great. Draws 2 to the ball, shoots threes, can assist. All of that would be great. I would prefer him over a guy like Trae Young. But will he sign an extension? Trae Young has the advantage of being under contract. You don't really care if he wants to be here or not. He's under contract and he has to be. Donovan Mitchell in a year could walk. So would he sign an extension? And it feels like you would need to talk to him first, talk to his representation and kind of get that assurance, or just like sign him to it the moment he's traded. But if you're the Pelicans, would it be worth taking a chance? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Would you trade Brandon Ingram, Dyson Daniels, or Jordan Hawkins and a first-round pick or 2 for Donovan Mitchell, knowing that he might walk, or is that too much to stomach? I don't know. He's so good. I think him and Zion could work so well together that it could be worth it. Look at what the Toronto Raptors did trading for Kawhi Leonard. He walked after a year, but they won the title. This is the type of thing that I think would elevate New Orleans into the upper echelon of Western Conference teams. This would be that kind of game-changing move that makes you significantly better. Say it's Ingram, something, and picks for Mitchell. Your starting lineup then is CJ McCollum, Donovan Mitchell, Trey Murphy or Herb Jones, first team all defense, Zion Williamson, and a center. I think that's pretty good. They're shooting there, particularly if you run Trey out there. CJ, Donovan Mitchell, and Trey around Zion sounds fun to me. You can get away with a cheaper center at that point in time too, because you have so much offense everywhere else. Still a bit of a hole at center, but that's also where a guy like Jarrett Allen's name has come up. And what I want to talk about in the next segment here in just a minute is, what if you could get both Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen? I did mention the Cavaliers' defense being very good, very elite. A lot of that is the rim protection that Jarrett Allen provides them. I think that would be a game changer, not just because you get a rim protecting center and a lob threat, and that's what he is. He's not a stretch big, not a three-point shooter. But I do think that getting a rim protector changes how this team would play defense. They wouldn't always need to switch everything. And that I think is the type of thing that opens you up to more defensive play styles than they currently have. That could be a useful thing too. You can also play very aggressive on the perimeter, knowing that you have that rim protection back there, kind of similar to what the Minnesota Timberwolves do with Rudy Gobert. So Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen coming to New Orleans in the same trade. Not as crazy as you might think. Let's look at what that deal would look like coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tool to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. You can't be stretched thin. You're already having people wear so many different hats. You need people in the right roles, and you need it quickly. Otherwise, you might be losing money, especially if your margins are thin. You can't afford that. LinkedIn Jobs is going to be the fix for you. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire, gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not have the time or resources to hire. So let LinkedIn Jobs do that for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. And today we are looking at trades with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Bring Donovan Mitchell in. I'm all for it. Right? What about other trades? And we'll look at maybe a slightly more realistic trade that's still pretty big in the third segment of today's show. For your second listen, brand new Saints offense. Maybe it's actually going to make Derek Carr be good. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. He's breaking down everything black and gold, including what the offense could look like next year and how that's going to impact and maybe help Derek Carr. That sounds good to me. Go check out Locked On Saints as your second listen today. So we just talked about Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen. I like both of them, right? And if you just trade for Donovan Mitchell, say you trade BI and a pick and another player, you still kind of have a hole at center with a starting lineup of CJ, Donovan Mitchell, Herb Jones, Zion, and whatever center it is. What if you can fix that? What if you can kind of solve all the Pelicans' problems with one move, one trade? And that involves Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen coming back to New Orleans. So you get that elite scorer, shooter, point guard, and a center that makes a ton of sense. Because look, the Cavaliers seem like they're going to get rid of one of Darius Garland, more on him in the third segment, or Donovan Mitchell, and one of Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley. Allen didn't play in the playoffs. Shams Charania had that, hit piece locked and loaded for teams that maybe you got to keep an eye on this offseason. Notice there wasn't one for the Pelicans after their loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. But the Cavaliers are kind of a team in flux in transition. So they're going to make some changes. They also desperately need wing help. They don't have it there. They need more size and scoring on the wing. Brandon Ingram gives them that. So what if you could fill that hole at center in the guard position, the creation position? You can do that. Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen coming into New Orleans in exchange for Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum and maybe another player and a pick or two. I would do that trade in a second. Your starting lineup then becomes Donovan Mitchell, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Jarrett Allen. You have that elite lob threat and rim protector there. You still have your defense in Herb Jones. You have shooting and scoring in Donovan Mitchell, Trey out there as well around Zion. I think it could work. I think that could really work and be a very, very good and elite team. And I think a deal like that makes a ton of sense for the New Orleans Pelicans. We love CJ. You'd like to, keep him here. Maybe not everyone loves CJ McCollum. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't speak for you. But I do think he's done some really good things here, and he had a very good season last year. But I understand, this is a way to get Trey Murphy in the starting lineup. If you trade Brandon Ingram straight up for Donovan Mitchell, Trey is likely still on the bench, and I think we want to see him have a bigger role. CJ, Donovan Mitchell, Herb Zion, center. You could swap out Herb Jones for trade there, but you're not going to do that. You like the defense. You like the shooting that Herb has given you, even if he's not a guy that, teams cover. But there's something to be said for his improvement there, and I think they want to kind of keep him in the starting lineup. And as I said in yesterday's show for the Everydayers, he is the backbone of the team. But I would do a deal, absolutely, that is CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, whatever picks they need, for Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen. Obviously, you're doing this if Donovan Mitchell is signing an extension. And I think that team looks really good on paper. You could even include a guy like Jordan Hawkins in that deal, then just basically sign Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan can give you a lot of the shooting that Hawkins gives you. And now this team is just built to win now versus also kind of planning for the future a little bit. It's going to be an expensive team, but you also shed some salary in this too, which makes it a little bit easier maybe for ownership to kind of approve this sort of deal and just be expensive for the next 2 years. So I think that's the type of deal that makes a ton of sense for New Orleans. That's kind of the pie in the sky dream deal, but they need some help on the wing. Cleveland absolutely needs some help on the wing. We'll talk about Isaac Okoro in the next segment here, Max Strus, but those guys aren't exactly like lighting it up, getting it done for them. They're not bad players by any stretch, but I think it would be very good to get an elite wing player, particularly in the Eastern Conference. And then they still have Darius Garland. Their starting lineup, if they do a deal like that, right, is going to be CJ McCollum, Darius Garland. You have CJ McCollum, Darius Garland, Brandon Ingram, right? Then it's probably is it Dean Wade or who's on the power forward position for them? Let me pull their roster up. Dean Wade at the 4, and then Evan Mobley at the 5. It's not bad. Like, I think that can be pretty competitive. You still get shooting in CJ. You have your point guard in Darius Garland, an elite wing scorer over in Brandon Ingram, a center that you like, and other role players. They still keep a lot of their depth, which has made them good. Max Strus, Isaac Okoro there on the wing as well. Karis LeVert coming off the bench in the backcourt. That's a team that does make some sense, particularly if you also include the 21st overall pick or the 17th overall pick in a deal, and then that gives them even more depth. Although I'd like New Orleans to keep one of those picks in this draft because you're going to need to draft someone else to kind of fill out the roster given how expensive all of a sudden it gets for the Pelicans here. But that's the dream deal. Why stop at Donovan Mitchell when you can get Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen? Well, I'm in favor of getting Jarrett Allen. He's not the stretch big that you really, really, really want to see play around Zion Williamson. I would be fine with him starting. Don't get me wrong. But if the deal is, and we'll look at this in the next segment, if the deal is like Brandon Ingram and the star piece coming back is Jarrett Allen, I don't love that. They called about Jarrett Allen at the trade deadline and Cleveland said, yeah, give us Brandon Ingram. We'll give you Jarrett Allen. That doesn't feel like enough to me. And we'll look at Darius Garland in the next segment here because that's probably the more likely player coming back along with Jarrett Allen. But that doesn't excite me nearly as much as Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen would. So I think when you look at it, that's where this trade makes it makes sense to me for both sides. You would need some picks really going to Cleveland there, and New Orleans is taking a risk depending on the contract situation with Donovan Mitchell. But I'm curious what you think about that deal. CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, let's say Jordan Hawkins, and like 2 first-round picks for Jarrett Allen and Donovan Mitchell. And that's assuming that Donovan Mitchell will sign an extension so he doesn't walk in a year. If he doesn't give you that, you trade significantly less. Look at kind of how cheap a guy like Kawhi Leonard went for in that trade because there weren't assurances that he would sign an extension. And that's why teams were scared off from trading for Anthony Davis because they knew he just wanted to go sign with the Lakers. That's why kind of that return from the Lakers for Anthony Davis is a little bit of a minor miracle given how little leverage the Pelicans had in that sort of deal. But we don't need to stop there, right? There's other players that can be included in any kind of permutation of this trade. Isaac Okoro can be included. Max Strus can be included. I think some guys probably wouldn't. I wouldn't hate Dean Wade coming to New Orleans if you could grab him, right? There's a lot of pieces there. The Cavaliers were good last season. They were 4th in the Eastern Conference, 48-34, one fewer win than the New Orleans Pelicans. And they won a first-round series, which New Orleans certainly didn't do here. So you could include a guy like Larry Nance Jr. going up. There's just so many combinations of deals, and we'll look at more of those in the next segment here, that I think this is probably like one of the more likely destinations for a guy like Brandon Ingram and potentially CJ McCollum if New Orleans really wants to make a big, big splash. That's the team that I would be calling first, the Cavaliers, trying to get a deal done. Let's look at some other deals, though, maybe less exciting than Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen, but no less important, impactful, and probably more realistic. Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen, it's like all the way up there. We're looking at the shining sun coming down on us, the savior and everything. That's a tough deal to figure out, and I would be shocked, though not like ruling it out, that if that's what happened, because that's such a significant move and risk for the Cavaliers, even if it makes sense. But there's other more realistic deals that I think work and that can help improve New Orleans. Let's take a look at those coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, big and small, and when you keep them bottled up, it can start to affect you negatively. So therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and to figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. So give BetterHelp a try. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual. It can just be difficult. And sometimes you need to work through things. Yes, you have your friends, but sometimes you need someone who's unbiased in your life that's just going to tell you like it is or use their years of experience to help guide you through this to find a solution to make your life better. I've used BetterHelp because I like that it's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You don't need to go to a doctor's office. You just hop on your computer, your phone, your tablet, and you're having your therapy session. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You'll find the person that you click with. So get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast doing Trade Target Thursday, Trade Team. This Thursday, it sounds like. We'll get more into the draft. You won't get draft coverage like this anywhere else when it comes to the Pelicans. It's about to be team workout season, draft workout season. You'll start to see some names leaking of who the Pelicans could be targeting. It'll be a lot of names. I'll help you sort through all of that here on Locked On Pelicans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your second listen today, ignore all that shouting on Fox Sports, ESPN, or any place they don't actually talk basketball. Just make the switch to the Locked On Sports Today free 24/7 sports streaming channel. It's a program for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all that yelling. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we went over kind of the big deal, right? Like that's Donovan Mitchell. Get him. Jarrett Allen's kind of number 2. If you can get them both, even better. There's a trade out there that I think makes some sense. A more realistic trade, though, is going to be not bringing in Donovan Mitchell. Jarrett Allen firmly on the table. Fully believe that, right? Those talks have probably already begun. Darius Garland could be included too. It gives you a guard there. If you trade Brandon Ingram for Brandon Ingram, someone else, and like another pick for Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen, I think that is doable. I want to look up one thing when it comes to Garland here. I think he's represented by Clutch, which I don't love here. Yeah, so he's represented by Clutch, Darius Garland, which is something we don't love, right? But look, he's a player, and this is a guy that can be a guard for you. He's a little bit undersized at 6'1", but this is a guy that, at one point was an all-star a couple of years ago. Back in 2021, 2022, as an all-star, he averaged 21.7 points per game on 17.3 shots. He shot 38% from 3 on over 6 attempts, almost 7 attempts per game, 8.6 assists. He's closer to a point guard than Donovan Mitchell is, though I wouldn't say he's elite at it. For his career, he averages 6.7 assists. Those aren't bad numbers. They're not insane numbers. 6.5 last year, 7.8 the year before that, 8.6 the year before that. So it's declining a little bit, but that has more to do with his role. He's a pretty good three-point shooter too, 38.4% on almost 6 attempts for his career. That's what you want to see. Guy that can fit around Zion Williamson a little bit more. And he's used to not being like the #1 guy kind of based on the team that he is a part of right now. So all of that makes sense. 17% of his shots at the rim, 42.3% of his shots from three-point range last year. Gets into the paint and takes those kind of mid-range jumpers, but not the long ones. Only 7.7% of his shots were between 16 feet in the three-point line. I think that's an okay number right there. So him and Jarrett Allen in exchange for Brandon Ingram, whatever other pieces, I think is something that can be realistic here. Your starting lineup then of CJ McCollum and Darius Garland isn't like my favorite backcourt. Defensively, it worries me, especially with Garland being shorter than CJ McCollum. Then you pop in Trey Murphy or Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, and Jarrett Allen, right? Or maybe Garland can come off the bench, though I don't think he would really take that kind of role. So it still kind of puts you in the same issue that you're in when we talked about just trading Brandon Ingram for Donovan Mitchell, right? One of the keys with all these trades is how do you get Trey Murphy into the starting lineup? I think we'd like to see that. I think that's something that can be really important. And as you look at kind of on-off guys, like the Pelicans win his minutes, and he's very impactful when he's paired with Zion Williamson. So finding a way to get him on the court there is important. Jarrett Allen's your center, Zion's your 4 here, Darius Garland, CJ, and then Trey or Herb. It's the same kind of conundrum question that's there. So you'd like to kind of expand a trade. You could potentially move CJ McCollum in a separate deal then. But if you get Jarrett Allen, what do you move him for? You don't need a center at that point in time. But I think if you look at a trade for Darius Garland, for Jarrett Allen, for Brandon Ingram, you could maybe get them to include a guy like Isaac Okoro, Max Strus in there, particularly if you give up someone like Dyson Daniels or Jordan Hawkins. And I think those guys, kind of give you more positional versatility and maybe a little bit more offense and defense, right? Strus can shoot. It seems like he would get played. He's depth on the wing. That's important. Same thing for Okoro. He's a very, very good defender that is shooting the ball relatively well, but just his offensive game hasn't really developed probably in the way that they would have liked. But that's a useful young player, and it maybe means you use one of those first-round picks in that deal to also bring him back. Okoro last season, where'd the numbers go? 9.4 points per game, but he shot 39% from 3 on 3 attempts. He's averaged for his career, that was the best he's had. His rookie year was bad, but the next 3 years weren't bad at all, and I think that says something there. So when you look at some of those numbers, it makes sense to have him as a depth piece. He's used to being a starter, but you bring him off the bench, there's use there, I think. The past 3 years, he's averaged 37% from 3, 2.6 attempts, right? Could his volume go up? Could that be a useful piece on a wing defender there that you bring off the bench? I think that's a guy that New Orleans would probably like. Or maybe you go after a Dean Wade, something like that. But there's ways to get deals done. Or maybe you don't get Garland and it's Jarrett Allen, Okoro, and Dean Wade, and you get a lot of depth there at that point for the New Orleans Pelicans and kind of complete the roster a little bit more, make it a little bit taller too, which I think is something. Do any of these trades excite you? But I think when you look at this team, the Cavaliers, they're kind of the most natural trade partner for the New Orleans Pelicans. I think there's a variety of ways you can get a deal done. Maybe it's not Jarrett Allen. Maybe it's just bringing in a guy like Darius Garland, Okoro, Dean Wade, right? And then you trade CJ for something like a center, whether that's to Orlando for Wendell Carter Jr. and Cole Anthony. And then you get and a pick. You could probably do that if you're New Orleans. If the Orlando Magic would do that, I think they can absorb CJ's salary like that. And then your starting lineup, that's a way to get Trey Murphy in there all of a sudden. There's different ways to kind of do this, and these trades expand. But when we're looking at the Cavaliers, the priority is Donovan Mitchell, then Jarrett Allen. To me, then it's Garland in like a distant third, and then whatever other pieces you'd like. I don't think you're going to get Evan Mobley from them. That's why we're not talking about him here. I don't think you're going to... I don't think you'll be able to get Garland and Mitchell, not that you would want that anyway. So I think when you look at it, Mitchell could be moved because of his situation. Allen could be moved because I think they want to kind of build around Evan Mobley. And that makes a ton of sense. And that makes sense for New Orleans as well because they need help on the wing. Enter one Brandon Ingram. Let me know what you think about these deals. What about these trades? Do you like the one of CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram for Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen and whatever pieces you need to kind of even it out, right? We don't need to get into the granular details of some of these real minor things, how many second round picks are included or not. That'll get sorted out. It's all about the big pieces, the main pieces, and that's what I see there. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And that's going to do it for this Trade Target Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate y'all watching, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.